Hey there, I'm Kristen Haynes with the waywardhome.com, and I spend half the year in my camper van and half on my sailboat. So today I'm super excited to have Noami Grevemberg on with me. Naomi has been living in a Volkswagen Vanagon since 2016 and is also the founder of Diversify Van Life. Thanks so much for coming onto the Wayward Home podcast.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
So, first of all, you've been living in the van since 2016, which is a long time and kind of before this whole trend of that hashtag van life thing. So, for you, how did you get this idea? How did you get started with van life?
Yeah, well, I mean, back in college, I always had this idea in my head of like traveling the country in a van, road tripping with my friends and visiting all the national parks. And after college, that dream kind of got buried in the noise of like, okay, I need to pursue a career. I need, to figure out this roadmap that I'm on. And and back in 2016, I decided, you know what, I wanted to kind of reevaluate my life trajectory because I was kind of moving down a path that didn't really feel very authentic to where I wanted to be and who I wanted to be. So digging up that old dream kind of felt like a good idea. Like, I wanted to be closer to nature. I wanted to like just travel, get out of my comfort zone. Um, and that's how I ended up doing it.
Wonderful. And was it hard at first to jump into a lifestyle like this when like you didn't see much of it online or in the media? It was kind of like not a known thing. What was that like?
It was really scary, to be honest with you. I don't think I thought too hard about it because I'm a head first in kind of person. When I have this idea, I kind of usually just run with them. But it was pretty scary. I mean, hashtag van life was still in its infancy. And honestly, like when I decided to dig up this old dream, I didn't even really know hashtag van life was a thing. It was in the process of looking for my van, I realized that, okay, there's this hashtag called van life. I guess this is a thing that people do. I mean, I was living in New Orleans at the time. We did not see anything like this down there. Um, and I didn't know anyone who had ever done what I was about to do. So yeah, it was really scary. It was a lot of experimenting, a lot of trial and error, like figuring out the van, because there were no like van build companies, there were no rental companies. So, there was really nothing online for camper vans except the Volkswagen bus, right? So yeah, so it was really a pivotal moment in my life where I had to make a choice. Hey, are you going to do this or are you not? And I just ran with it.
And you've been in the Volkswagen for years. And what do you love about the Volkswagen? And you haven't changed vans at all either, which is interesting because I just wanted to talk to you about your relationship with your van.
Oh gosh, this old tin can, I have recreated myself over and over in it, and I absolutely love the Volkswagen Vanagon. I mean, the first time I saw it online when I was looking for my rig, I fell in love. It was the bus that I saw first, and I just love the bright colors. I love the tiny kitchen. And I explored a couple of them before I finally found the one, which is the one that I'm in, my Vanagon. Um, but for me, the buses were a little too small. The Volkswagen Vanagon was just perfect. I just absolutely love how the space is utilized. I mean, there's literally no wasted space in this rig. And of course, we figured out a lot of ways to fill it, even though we say that we're minimalist, but it's about what you value. And of course, there are two humans and a dog living in here, but I really, really love this van. And yeah, I don't know. She's a part of my family, right? This van is a character in my story, a part of my family, and I am going to keep it alive as long as I can.
Great. And so in the beginning, what were some of the major, challenges and frustrations you faced living in the van? Because it is a big shift going from an apartment or a house to a van.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we left a big apartment with a whole lot of stuff. And I think the first step was really downsizing and kind of figuring out what to bring was really tricky because, again, I didn't really know anyone that was living this way. And Yeah, there was like the minimalist movements and all of that, but it was still so different because it's like I'm moving into a mobile van to travel. And of course, like thinking about all the outdoor activities that I wanted to participate in, all the meals that I'm gonna cook, like how many plates and cups do I need, how many pieces of clothing. I had so many pieces of clothing in this rig. It was really unnecessary. And only to realize that I was wearing the same thing over and over again because we were living outdoors. You know, I'm dirty all the time. Who has time to change clothes? I'm not getting enough showers, you know. That was another transition. It's like we don't have a shower, we don't have a toilet. So those were the challenging parts in the beginning, to be honest with you. It's just figuring out what to keep and what to get rid of.
Totally. And did you guys have a particular plan for your route, or were you just flying by the seat of your pants, or how did you figure out where you wanted to go?
So we had a tentative plan. It was actually supposed to be a 1 year road trip from New Orleans to Alaska to see the aurora and then head back to New Orleans and go back to work, you know. But granted, we both quit our jobs. So, but Dustin was able to parlay his into a remote position, which was, we were really fortunate for that. But yeah, it was supposed to be a 1 year road trip. And 6 months in, you know, we realized, hey, I don't want to stop doing this. Like, I want to continue living this way. We didn't really have, you know, a journey mapped out. We just wanted to visit the national parks. We wanted to explore the country, see America, and be in nature. I wanted to hike and, you know, backpack and swim and canoe and all the things. And so that was it. It was just being guided by my passions and the outdoors.
Yeah, and you grew up in the Caribbean, right? And you were
Yeah.
probably, I'm guessing outside quite a bit, growing up, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in a small fishing village on the island of Trinidad in a rainforest. So I grew up in nature. I mean, that's what we did. My people were fisher people. They hunt, we foraged. I mean, we had a very, very simple life, simple upbringing. We were, you know, poor. So, nature was everything to us. Nature provided, sustained us, you know, brought us joy, recreation, everything. So, coming to America and being cut off from that, living in cities, eventually took a toll on me. And that, I guess that calling back to nature is what led me to want to pursue this lifestyle.
Totally. I've totally relate to that being in cities and how you feel so cut off and just you're not within it. You're not feeling the rain or hearing anything, or it's just, it always jars me still to this day to be in a city. And I feel like probably people aren't even aware of this that live in cities, that they're missing nature so much.
So true. I mean, it's only until I decided to live in a van and spent, you know, our first 6 months, we were pretty much out in cities. We didn't really spend, I mean, out in nature, we didn't really spend a lot of time in cities. Um, and the first time I went to a city, it was San Francisco. A friend invited us to come visit, and I got a panic attack by all the noise and the lights and the sounds. And, you know, it was just so much. I was standing in the middle of the street, like, you know, having this panic attack. And Dustin said, "Oh my gosh, we're not too far from the hotel. Just hang on." And I pretty much hid in the hotel the entire weekend and did not want to leave because I was so overwhelmed by the city and coming out of nature, being in nature. And you know, like at times, you know, we have taken breaks from the road and we usually go back to New Orleans for that. And even back in New Orleans, which I think, you know, New Orleans still have this kind of really down home vibe about it that kind of reminds me of the Caribbean in a lot of ways. Um, this, you know, all the sounds of the air conditioning buzzing, the cars on the street, the lights outside, like it's interesting. I get a bit disoriented in cities now.
Yeah, it is shocking. And you mentioned San Francisco, which is where we usually go back to sometimes
Right.
for Tom's work. And I just find it like, like I need nature. Like this is wild. So
Right, right.
it's funny how you just get so used to a different environment when you live like in a van or on a sailboat. It's you are very in touch with your surroundings. And I think it's a calming presence inside of our body and good for our mental health. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Cool. And yeah, so back when we were talking before how Dustin got a remote job or made his position remote, how did you end up starting to create an income from the road?
Oh gosh, a lot of trial and error. Because, I mean, again, going back to it, it was, back in 2016, remote work was still also in its infancy. There were, a few websites that where you can go on if you have certain skills, but I didn't have the skills to pursue any of those opportunities. So it was a lot of trial and error. But again, like I started thinking really deeply about what I wanted for myself, what brings me joy. And that was pursuing passions. Like I had a passion for photography, I love writing. So I kind of, went back to that. Like, okay, I want to write. I want to, write again. I want to learn photography. So I started just kind of honing some of those skills. And it took a long time before I could make any money from adapting these passions, but eventually I did and I have. And since then I've been able to like really create financial independence for myself on the road through, remote entrepreneurship. And that's been such a blessing. But yeah, it took a lot of experimenting with the things that I love. And also like trying not to default back into um the way the mentality that I was trying to unlearn for myself in the
Right.
process.
Such a blessing to be able to create a business around things you love, huh? It's really makes your life more sustainable, how you're currently living than how you were living in New Orleans.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, what really kept me motivated and inspired was this idea of blurring the line between work and play. And I kept going back to that every time I felt, okay, well, I don't know if this is working out for me, but let me just pivot a little bit. And also like giving myself a lot of grace. I mean, I was recreating my entire life. I burnt it all down and decided, hey, I have to rebuild this my way. And that's in the end, that's my version of the American dream.
Totally. It's a great version. It's mine too. And I think a lot of inspiring nomads as well to craft our own life. So
Yeah.
it's definitely amazing. So part of your way into your journey, you started to do the Diversify Van Life. When did you start that and what prompted you to start that?
Yeah, so in 2019, I did this van life gathering circuit that summer. This was when, I felt like the van life community was really solidifying. Um, the van life was really solidifying community, and what that meant for us as a unconventional movement, an unconventional way of life, where we are on the road and, community is hard to find. Well, how do we build this? Right. So the Van Life Gathering Circuit was just so exciting for me and for so many people. Just coming together, all these fans and all these, really unique individuals with all these stories, um, building and solidifying deep connections to help sustain us on the road. And that was just such a beautiful concept to me. And I was really excited to participate and to be a part of that profound uh, change that we're making in the world. But the one thing that really stuck out for me and was really difficult for me to digest, and also caused me a lot of like isolation in the end, was that I didn't really see a lot of people like me, a lot of BIPOC. There wasn't a lot of representation of like often excluded groups of people, like even the queer community. There wasn't really a big, a representation of the queer community. So I just felt detached from the community by the end of the van life circuit. And I brought it up a few times to leaders of the community who were like putting together these events. But it just fell on deaf ears. And at the end of it, I just felt anxious. I felt alienated. I felt angry. And decided to speak up about it. And when I did, I got a lot of support, but I also got a lot of pushback from a lot of people who refused to really understand what it means to build an inclusive community and to see a different perspective. um and that also just pushed me over the edge. I decided to do something about it. Like if, the community isn't going to come together and really have a conversation about this topic, then I'm going to do something about it. Like I'm going to advocate for myself. I'm going to make the change that I want to see. And that's what I did. I created Diversify Van Life as a way to bring the often excluded groups of nomads and people together in a safe space where we can shift the narrative, where we can own our own stories and share our stories and build community. Because I mean, representation is important, to be your best self. Out here, you have to see your best self out here, so that was really important to me because it came down to a point where I wasn't sure that this was a lifestyle for me because I didn't see people like me represented. None of the stories that were being told in the mainstream of van life media resonated with me. So yeah, that's how I started Diversify Van Life, and it was really, I guess, confirming for me when I saw the community mobilize around the idea of Diversify Van Life. And it kicked open a door that um, really lend itself to a powerful movement in its own right, like to see other BIPOC nomads and organizations like Van Life Pride, communities like the Van Life Pride community kind of like come out of the woodworks was really beautiful to witness. And I'm really grateful for that.
Do you think that in the following years you've started to see more representation of other communities within van life? I'm hoping it's growing. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, there's outdoorsy Black women, there's like again like the Van Life Pride community and other small communities as well, but it's definitely growing. And I see so many marginalized groups of people just like being represented and owning their own stories and like stepping out and empowering themselves to speak their truth. Because, for me, those are some of the most important stories. Those are the stories that I want to hear about, the ones that, are often excluded from the mainstream narrative. So it's been really beautiful to see more diversity in the community, but not just diversity, also like inclusion. Like there are people who, being welcomed and getting a seat at the table and being allowed to like to create and build a life without um being excluded from the narrative.
Totally. And did you and Dustin, like as an interracial couple, did you guys ever feel like nervous about traveling or have bad experiences on the road?
Oh yeah, totally. We've had bad experiences with the road, especially with the police, but and having breakdowns. But I think for me, the safety issue was always a part of the subject for us. But again, Dustin, I'm not gonna lie, like I feel lucky, like being able to have his white male privilege to lean into at times, especially when it comes to interacting with the cops or interacting with people when we have breakdowns and such. But people are so wonderful on the road. I haven't had a lot of bad experiences with actual people on the road, but I have had some experiences with dealing with the police on the road, which is really scary.
Oh, yeah, scary and awful and things that people don't even think about that are like, white people like don't even like can't conceptualize what that's like. So I think it's
Right.
important for them to put them in someone else's shoes and think about, what that's
Mhm.
like and how they can help, in this
Yeah,
situation. So yeah,
totally.
so I'm glad that you've been talking about it and bringing it to the forefront like this. I think that's important. So
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. And you've found, yeah, when people see themselves represented, maybe they're more likely to try it and to jump in and live van life, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point, like I think we all deserve to explore whatever lifestyles we feel called to. And I know like in the beginning, like pre Diversify Van Life, there was, people would reach out to me all the time on social media asking questions, people, BIPOC, Black women, solo, women who want to pursue solo travel. Um, but there weren't a lot of representation of it, and there was a lot of fear associated with it. So I think it's important for us to break those barriers by, sharing our stories, by creating space for individuals who don't have the resources or the privilege or the means to share their stories as well, like utilizing our social capital and, speaking up against, the lack of representation, and creating some room. I mean, there's space for all of us, and I think, once we do that, we really challenging the status quo in that way. That's what we out here doing. We're all, challenging the norms, right? Unlearning. So that's a really important part to play in that, you know, as we pursue this alternative lifestyle.
Yeah, so true. And yeah, and I love that you have, your book coming out this summer, which I read, and it's really exciting. Living that van life, is what it's called. But I'm wondering the backstory of this book, like how did you decide to write this? When did you decide to write this?
Well, it's an interesting story because I always thought someday I would write a book. I just never thought it would happen the way that it did. This is during the pandemic. It was 2020. I got an email from an editor at Simon and Schuster with this idea to write a book, and I actually thought it was a scam or something. So, but I said, you know what, I'll bite. I responded to the email and I said, okay, yeah, I'll get on a call. Got on a call, and the editor, mentioned that she had an idea for this book that she wanted me to write. Um, and I had a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm like, me? Like, why me? Like, why do you want me to write a book? This is so interesting. Um, so I thought about it for a while, like maybe a week or so. Like, do I want to do this? Like, do I have the capacity to do this? This is like, am I a writer? Like, again, imposter syndrome. And then I decided, you know what? Why not? I can do this. So that's pretty much how it happened in a nutshell. Like this editor reached out with this idea to write the book. And I took that idea and I ran with it. I mean, this book is way, way back, way bigger and more extensive than the original concept. But I think that's what we wanted. It's a part memoir, part practical travel guide written through the lens of the intersections that I navigate as a Black identifying queer woman on the road and an immigrant. So I'm really proud of it. I'm really excited about it, and to get it into people's hands. Yeah.
Yeah, was it challenging to write? Like what was that process like for you?
I mean, I've never written a book before, so just learning what works for me as a writer in that way was a kind of a learning curve, but I figured it out. But I think the most difficult part was like um, living on the road during a pandemic and writing a book at the same time. So it was a challenge for sure, but it really was such a healing experience for me during that time, just processing my life on the road, just processing my life pre-van life as well, and the journey that got me here. And there's so many incredible stories that I share with individuals, with people in the book, and also like just a ton of like learnings from my experience living in a van on the road. So it's just jam packed with just so much love and value. And I really think that every person is going to find something to resonate with and find value in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you come from, your walks of life, anything, there's just something in there for everyone.
Yeah. Was there anything scary about writing it? Was there anything you were like hesitant to put out there that you had to overcome, or do you feel like you're generally open book, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Just being vulnerable with what I was sharing. I mean, I wanted to be as authentic as I could, with my story. Um, and just keeping it real, yeah, there's a lot of vulnerability, a lot of juicy stuff in there. I think for the most part, just coming out in my book as a queer BIPOC woman was was scary at first, but it felt right. It felt like something that I was ready to do. And it felt important to me as well, to show up in my truth. I mean, this book is my book. I wrote it. It's my story, and I get to define that. No one else does. And, I've spent so many years on the road, uh, you know, in my identity crisis and my healing journey and trying to figure out who the heck I am in this road travel life, in this life in general. And that was a big part of it. And just accepting myself as a whole person, regardless of my race, sexual identity, all of it. And coming out in my book initially felt really scary, but I have no regrets. I'm really, really proud of that step. And, it's kind of like at a point now where I don't really care what anyone thinks. I am a whole person, and I'm deserving. Yeah.
Totally. That's an amazing point to come through. And it is a cathartic experience to write a book like that, which is very vulnerable. And yeah, I'm wondering if you have any favorite like parts of the book that you can kind of tease people with. What are some of your like favorite little, things people should look forward to in there?
Oh gosh. I think one of my favorites is where I talk about cohabiting in a van. It's funny, it's vulnerable. I mean, I think people are gonna laugh, they're gonna cry, they're gonna like, yeah, I think, yeah, the stories are just fantastic. So I think that's my favorite part. Yeah, I
Yeah.
included some like little anecdotes from community members as well. So it just lend such a beautiful layer because it's from, really diverse voices of individuals cohabiting in their vans. So I think yeah, that's my favorite.
I like that part too. I do like that you share, vulnerable and realistic views of what van life is, because it's not all like roses like people can see on Instagram and they're like, oh, I want to do that. And it's like, no, it's hard.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I really wanted to just keep it real with this book, because there are other van life books out there, but I also feel like it's just so romanticized. Like all the pictures are of like you're in this beautiful landscape and like you said, there are wildflowers and we're, sunbathing and whatever. But I wanted to keep it real. And yes, that is a part of it. That is a part of my van life journey. There are those beautiful moments, but we don't talk as much as we should about the hard stuff, the stuff that really defines you on your journey, the stuff that you can't touch. You have to feel it, and you have to like, really, it's like this mental breakthrough and emotional breakthrough at times, like your sense of safety and sharing your rig with someone else. It's like that is a really, it makes or breaks you. you know so I really wanted to keep it real, and yeah, and the photography shows in that as well, and the stories, so yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It feels like van life kind of whittles you down to your true essence, doesn't it?
It really does, it really does. You're forced to do it, it's like you don't have a choice.
And your
You gotta,
partner's essence.
oh gosh, yeah, you gotta take a look at it. It really forces you to give yourself grace as well.
Yeah, yeah, there's so many beautiful things about it. Of course, trials too, like you were saying, the lack of showers and bathrooms, but you get used to it over time and it just becomes your lifestyle. That's what I've found. So,
Yeah,
uh,
totally. Yeah. I think that the bathroom and the showers and going to the bathroom is really not that big a deal compared to like all the other stuff that you experience living this lifestyle, especially with another person. And I've never experienced solo road travel, so I'm sure like, that's a whole other perspective as well.
yeah, totally. Well, great. Is there anything else you wanted to say about your book or your lifestyle or anything we missed?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many exciting things happening with me right now. I really like a lot of beautiful changes that I'm experiencing. So, like just people should follow along. Go to Ivy to Aurora on Instagram and follow along. It's really like special to me, and a labor of love, and I really, really feel like it's going to be really impactful for a lot of people. Yeah, and follow Diversify Van Life on Instagram as well. That's another place we're going to be announcing a lot of different things and talking about the book, and yeah, just sharing all that.
Great. Well, I'll totally add the links to all of that below in the show notes so people can find you and follow your journey. You're very fun to watch on Instagram with your beautiful
Thank you.
photography. And so I
Uh,
think people will enjoy that and your
thank
book and everything you're up to. So yeah, so thank you so much for coming on and talking about all this. It's
yeah.
great. And yeah, hope tons of people buy your book, and yeah, good luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show.